The dust swirled like angry ghosts across the Texas marketplace, and Garrett's boots hit the dry earth with a rhythm that matched his racing heart. He'd seen many things in his 32 years, stampedes that shook the ground like earthquakes, droughts that cracked the earth into 1,000 pieces, rattlesnakes coiled in his bedroll waiting to strike, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared him for what stood on that wooden platform in the center of town. A woman, head covered by a rough burlap sack, tied cruelly at the neck with coarse rope, her hands bound behind her back so tightly that even from a distance, Garrett could see the rope cutting into her brown skin. She swayed slightly in the scorching heat, and he wondered how long she'd been standing there, suffocating under that fabric, displayed like merchandise. The auctioneer's voice cut through the morning air like a rusted blade scraping across stone. $5, just $5 for this Apache. Strong back, young, healthy. She'll work your fields, tend your livestock, cook your meals. $5, gentlemen, a bargain. Garrett's jaw tightened so hard his teeth ached. His father had taught him two things before dying 5 years ago. Respect the land that feeds you, and respect every soul that walks upon it. This wasn't respect. This was something that made his stomach turn. Something that tasted like bile and shame in the back of his throat. The crowd shuffled their feet, uninterested. Men looked but didn't bid. $5 was still $5, and times were desperately hard. The drought had stretched into its third year. Crops failed. Cattle died. Money was scarcer than rain. Garrett's hand moved to his pocket, feeling the coins there, heavy, cold, finite. It was everything he had left after buying seed for spring planting. Without it, his small ranch would produce nothing this year. He'd go hungry, maybe lose the land his father had died protecting. But without it, this woman would be sold to someone far worse than a greedy auctioneer. He'd seen the type of men who bought human beings. He'd seen what they did. The auctioneer raised his gavel. Going once. $5. Garrett's voice rang out, surprising even himself. It echoed off the wooden buildings, making heads turn. The auctioneer grinned, showing 3 missing teeth and gums, the color of old meat. Sold to the quiet cowboy in the back. Step right up, friend. Money changed hands, coins that felt heavier leaving his palm than they ever had entering it. The woman was shoved roughly toward Garrett, stumbling in her bindings, unable to catch herself. He caught her arm, gently, carefully, as if she were made of glass, and felt her entire body flinch at his touch. Of course she did. Why wouldn't she? To her, he was just another man who'd paid money for her. Just another threat. Easy, he whispered, though he wasn't sure she understood English. Easy now. I won't hurt you. He led her away from the marketplace, past the curious stares and whispered comments that followed them like shadows. His horse, a patient gray mare named Silverbell, waited at the hitching post, swishing flies with her tail. Garrett helped the woman onto the horse with extreme care, then climbed up behind her, positioning himself so she wouldn't fall, but keeping enough distance to not frighten her further. They rode in complete silence for 20 minutes, the town disappearing behind them like a bad dream fading in morning light. The only sounds were Silverbell's steady hoofbeats and the woman's rapid breathing through the burlap sack. Garrett's mind raced. What was he doing? He'd just spent his last money. For what? A grand gesture? Redemption for sins he hadn't committed but benefited from anyway? When they reached the cottonwood grove near his property line, where the creek still held a trickle of water, Garrett finally stopped. This was far enough. Private enough. His hands moved to the rope around her wrists. She jerked away violently, nearly throwing herself from the horse, preferring a hard fall to whatever she thought he planned. Stop! I'm trying to help, Garrett said, keeping his voice low and steady, the exact tone he used with spooked horses. He showed her his hands, empty, weaponless, non-threatening. Then slowly, moving like he had all the time in the world, he reached for the knots again. This time she let him, though every muscle in her body remained coiled tight as a spring. The ropes fell away, dropping into the dust. Her hands came forward, and she immediately began rubbing her wrists, where the rope had left angry red marks. Then, even more carefully, Garrett reached for the burlap sack covering her head. She tensed again, a small sound escaping her throat. Not quite a whimper, not quite a growl. He pulled it off in one smooth motion. Black hair spilled out, long and tangled, and matted with sweat. Her face was dirt-streaked, lips cracked from dehydration, but her eyes, dark as midnight and twice as deep, stared at him with a mixture of fear and fury that nearly knocked him backward off the horse. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe 25, and exhausted in a way that went deeper than physical tiredness. Don't forget to subscribe. Please write in the comments where you're watching from. It really makes us happy to know. You're free, Garrett said, pointing to the open prairie stretching in every direction like an ocean of grass and possibility. You understand? Free. You can go wherever you want. She stared at him, uncomprehending or disbelieving. He couldn't tell which. Maybe both. He dismounted and stepped away from Silverbell, putting distance between himself and the woman. He pulled a canteen from his saddlebag and set it on the ground, along with a small leather pouch of dried meat and some hardtack bread. Then he backed away further, hands visible, movements slow and deliberate. Go on, he said, gesturing to the horizon where the sun was climbing higher, turning the sky from pink to burning blue. Ride wherever you want. Silverbell, the horse. She knows how to find water. She's smart, gentle. You'll be okay, I promise. The woman, Nasha, though he didn't know her name yet, didn't know anything about her except that she deserved better than being sold, looked at the horse, then at Garrett, then at the vast emptiness surrounding them. Her hands, finally free after who knows how long, continued rubbing the raw marks on her wrists. She could leave. Right now. Nothing stopping her. Then she did something Garrett didn't expect. Something that changed the entire trajectory of both their lives. She didn't run.
She didn't take the horse and disappear into the wilderness.
She climbed down slowly, each movement cautious, picked up the canteen with trembling hands, drank deeply like someone who'd been dying of thirst, and then sat down right there in the dirt, folding her legs beneath her, staring at him with those impossible, unreadable eyes. Garrett stood frozen, genuinely unsure what to do next. The sun climbed higher, the heat building like pressure in a kettle, and still neither of them moved. A standoff without weapons, a conversation without words. Two people from completely different worlds trying to understand a single moment of unexpected humanity. Finally, after what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, Nasha spoke. One word in heavily accented English that shattered the silence and changed everything. Why? It was the simplest question in the world, and the most complicated answer Garrett had ever faced. Why? The question hung in the desert air between them like smoke. Garrett looked at this woman sitting in the dirt, her dark eyes demanding an answer he wasn't sure he could give. Not because he didn't know, but because putting it into words felt impossible. Because, he started, then stopped. He sat down across from her, keeping a respectful distance, his hat shading his eyes from the climbing sun. Because my father once told me that a man's worth isn't measured by what he owns, but by what he's willing to give up for what's right. Nasha tilted her head slightly, processing his words. Her English was limited, he could tell, but she understood more than she let on. Smart, cautious, survival instincts honed by necessity. You buy me, then free me? She spoke slowly, testing each word like stepping stones across a river. Yes. Why? She asked again, more insistent this time. Garrett pulled off his hat, running his hand through his sweat-dampened hair. Where I come from, where I was raised, my father taught me that every person has dignity, that nobody should be owned. I saw you up there, and He trailed off, searching for words. I couldn't walk away. Nasha studied him for a long moment, then looked down at her wrists, at the rope burns that would scar. Many men see, you only one who stop. The truth of that statement hit Garrett harder than any physical blow. She was right. Dozens of men had walked past that platform. He wasn't special. He'd just been the only one who couldn't live with himself if he'd kept walking. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She hesitated, as if her name were a precious thing she wasn't ready to share. Finally, Nasha. Nasha, he repeated, trying to pronounce it correctly. I'm Garrett, and I meant what I said. You're free to go, but... He paused, weighing his next words carefully. If you need a place to rest, to get your strength back, my ranch is just over that ridge. Small place, just me and Silverbell. You could stay a few days. No obligations, no expectations. Just rest, food, and water. Nasha's eyes narrowed. Why you help? There was that question again, dressed differently, but meaning the same thing. Why would a white man help an Apache woman? In her experience, white men only wanted one thing, and it wasn't to help. Because it's the right thing to do, Garrett said simply. And because I think you've had enough of people doing the wrong thing. They sat in silence for several minutes. A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermal currents. Silverbell grazed on the sparse grass near the creek. The world continued turning, indifferent to the strange negotiation happening beneath the cottonwood trees. Finally, Nasha stood. Garrett remained seated, non-threatening, letting her make the choice. She walked to Silverbell, ran her hand along the horse's flank, feeling the animal's calm energy. Then she looked back at Garrett. 3 days, she said, holding up 3 fingers. I stay 3 days, then I go. Garrett nodded, relief flooding through him, though he couldn't quite say why. 3 days. Fair enough. The ranch wasn't much. A small wooden cabin, a barn that leaned slightly to the left, a corral with split-rail fencing, and about 40 acres of stubborn land that fought him every season. But it was his, bought with his father's life savings, and maintained with Garrett's blood and sweat. He showed Nasha to the barn first. You can sleep here, he said, pointing to a clean corner where he'd stacked fresh hay. I'll bring blankets. There's a well behind the cabin, water's clean and cold, and I'll cook something for supper. Nasha explored the barn slowly, touching the tools hanging on the walls, examining everything with the careful attention of someone assessing potential weapons or escape routes. Garrett understood. Trust wasn't given. It was earned, especially when you'd been betrayed by the world as many times as she surely had. That evening, Garrett cooked beans and cornbread over the fire pit outside. Nothing fancy, but it was hot and filling. He brought a plate to the barn, setting it down near where Nasha sat, then retreated to eat his own meal by the fire. She emerged after a few minutes, carrying the empty plate. She'd eaten everything, he noted. Good. She needed her strength. Tomorrow, Garrett said, I need to mend the fence on the north pasture. You can rest or... He gestured vaguely, unsure how to offer without offending. Or you can help if you want. Up to you. Nasha set the plate down. I help. You don't have to. I help, she repeated more firmly. I not weak. I not burden. Garrett nodded, understanding. She needed to feel useful, needed to maintain her dignity. He could respect that. All right then. We start at sunrise. The next morning came fast and cool. the way desert mornings do before the heat arrives like an unwelcome guest. Garrett found Nasha already awake, standing outside the barn, watching the sun paint the eastern sky in shades of orange and pink. They worked together in near silence, Garrett showing her how to repair the fence posts, how to stretch the wire tight without breaking it. She learned quickly, her hands skilled and sure. By midday, they'd completed more work than Garrett usually managed alone in 2 days. During a water break, Nasha spoke. "You have woman? Wife?" Garrett shook his head. "No. Had a girl once, years ago. She wanted city life. San Antonio, maybe Houston. I wanted this." He gestured at the land around them. "We wanted different things. You lonely?" The question was so direct it caught him off guard. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but loneliness is better than being with the wrong person." Nasha nodded, as if this made perfect sense. "My husband died 2 winters ago. Soldiers come. They—" She stopped, her jaw tightening. "They take everything. Kill many. I run. Hide. Then men find me. Put sack on head. Sell me like horse." Garrett felt anger rise in his chest, not at her, but at a world that could be so cruel. "I'm sorry, I'm so damn sorry that happened to you." "Not your fault," she said, but her eyes said she wasn't entirely sure about that yet. His people had done this, even if he personally hadn't. They worked until sunset, then ate together. This time, Nasha joined him by the fire instead of hiding in the barn. Progress, Garrett thought. Small, but significant. On the 3rd morning, Garrett woke to find Nasha already gone. His heart sank. She'd left during the night, probably wanting to avoid a goodbye. He couldn't blame her. Why would she stay? But then he heard sounds from the corral. He walked over to find Nasha with Silver Bell, brushing the horse's coat with long, gentle strokes. She'd also fed the chickens and drawn water from the well. "Thought you were leaving today," Garrett said carefully. Nasha didn't look up from her work. "Maybe I stay longer. Maybe 1 more week." A smile tugged at Garrett's lips, but he kept his voice neutral. 1 more week then. Fair enough. As the sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the ranch, Garrett realized something had shifted. The air felt different, lighter somehow. Trust was a fragile thing, easily broken and hard to build. But they were building it, one day at a time, one honest moment after another. And for the first time since his father's death, Garrett didn't feel quite so alone. 1 week became 2. 2 became a month. Neither of them spoke about it directly, but somewhere along the way, Nasha had stopped counting days. The rope burns on her wrists faded to thin white lines, barely visible unless you knew to look for them. Garrett taught her things, not because he thought she didn't know, but because their worlds had been so different. He showed her how to repair a saddle, how to read the clouds for coming rain, how to coax stubborn vegetables from the dry soil. In return, Nasha taught him which desert plants could heal wounds, how to move silently through brush, how to read animal tracks like words on a page. They developed a rhythm, a partnership built on mutual respect rather than obligation. But Garrett noticed something in Nasha's eyes during quiet moments. A distant look, a longing that pulled her gaze toward the mountains in the west. One evening, as they sat by the fire watching stars emerge like diamonds scattered across black velvet, Nasha finally spoke what had been weighing on her heart. "My people," she said softly. "My family. They in mountains. I need know if they live." Garrett had been expecting this. Dreading it, maybe, but expecting it. "How long since you've seen them?" Many months. Before soldiers. Before... She touched her wrist unconsciously. I need find them. I need know. Garrett stared into the fire, watching flames dance and flicker. He could tell her to go alone, wish her well, watch her ride away on Silverbell into a future he wouldn't be part of. It would be easier, safer, less complicated. Instead, he heard himself say, then we'll find them, together. Nasha's head snapped toward him, eyes wide. You come? You think I'd let you go alone into territory that's crawling with... He stopped himself, choosing words carefully. With dangerous men? Besides, I know these lands pretty well. Might be useful.
Your ranch?
The ranch survived before me. It'll survive a few weeks without me. He met her eyes across the fire. You helped me here. Let me help you there. Something shifted in Nasha's expression. Surprise, maybe gratitude, maybe something deeper that neither of them was ready to name yet. When we leave? 3 days. Give me time to arrange things. Pack supplies. We'll need food, extra water, bedrolls, medicine. Garrett was already making mental lists. It'll be hard travel. The mountains are unforgiving this time of year. I know hard, Nasha said quietly. I know survive. I know you do, Garrett replied. But this time, you won't have to do it alone. They left on a Tuesday morning, the sun barely kissing the horizon. Garrett had packed Silverbell carefully. Dried meat, beans, flour, coffee, blankets, a small tent, ammunition for his rifle, and the medical supplies his father had left behind. He'd asked his neighbor, old Miguel, to watch the ranch, feed the chickens, keep an eye on things. Miguel had looked at him knowingly. You're going after her people, aren't you? She needs to know if they're alive.
Miguel had gripped his shoulder. Your father would be proud. But be careful, amigo. The mountains don't forgive mistakes.
Now, 3 days into their journey, Garrett understood what Miguel meant. The terrain grew rougher with each mile. Rocky paths that tested Silverbell's sure-footedness, steep climbs that left them both breathless, and nights so cold they had to share the fire's warmth just to avoid freezing. But there were beautiful moments too. A sunset that painted the canyon walls in shades of red and gold. A hidden waterfall where they refilled their canteens and rested in the spray's cool mist. The way Nasha's face changed when she recognized landmarks from her childhood, hope replacing the constant guardedness she usually wore. On the 4th night, as they made camp in a protected alcove beneath towering cliffs, Nasha began to talk more freely than she ever had. When I was girl, she said, poking the fire with a stick, my grandmother tell me stories. She say our people strong because we remember. We remember songs, remember places, remember each other. She paused, her voice thick with emotion. I afraid I forget. Afraid they forget me. Garrett pulled his blanket tighter against the mountain chill. People don't forget family, Nasha. Not real family. You have family? Just my father. He died 5 years back. Threw his back out moving a fallen tree, got infection, and... Garrett shrugged, trying to make it sound simpler than it was. He fought it for 2 weeks. Stubborn man, but the infection won.
You miss him?
Every single day. Garrett smiled sadly. He would have liked you. He always said the strongest people are the ones who survive what should have broken them.
Nasha was quiet for a long moment. Then, I glad you bought me that day. I glad it was you.
The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Neither of them was quite ready to explore. Garrett felt his chest tighten, felt something shift in the carefully maintained distance they'd kept between them. Me too, he said finally. Me too. The next morning brought challenges. The path narrowed to barely wider than Silverbell's body, with a sheer drop on one side that made Garrett's stomach flip every time he looked down. Nasha led now, recognizing the trail, her feet finding purchase on rocks that looked impossible to climb. "Almost there," she called back, excitement and anxiety mixing in her voice. "One more ridge, then we see." They climbed for another hour, Garrett's legs burning, his breath coming in short gasps. But he didn't complain, didn't ask to rest. Nasha needed this, and he'd carry her on his back up this mountain, if that's what it took. Finally, they crested the ridge. Nasha stopped so suddenly that Garrett nearly walked into her. Below them, in a hidden valley, protected by mountains on three sides, smoke rose from several campfires. Structures made of wood and hide dotted the landscape. People moved between them. Tiny figures from this distance, but unmistakably there, unmistakably alive.
"They live,"
Nasha whispered, her voice breaking.
"They still here. They live."
Tears streamed down her face, and she didn't bother wiping them away. Garrett stood beside her, giving her this moment, understanding that he was witnessing something profound. A reunion months in the making, hope fulfilled after endless uncertainty. But then Nasha grabbed his arm, her grip tight. "Garrett, they not know you. They see white man. They think enemy. They think danger." Garrett had known this moment would come, had prepared himself for it. "I know, but I'm with you. That has to count for something." "It count," Nasha said, though her voice carried doubt. "But maybe not enough. My people, they have reason for fear, reason for hate." "Then we go slowly. We let them decide." Garrett met her eyes. "But I came this far. I'm not turning back now." Nasha studied his face, searching for something. Whatever she found seemed to satisfy her, because she nodded. "Okay, we go together. But Garrett, you let me talk first. You stay quiet, stay calm. No matter what they say, no matter what they do. You understand?" "I understand." They began the descent into the valley, each step taking them closer to a confrontation that would test everything they'd built together over these past weeks. Garrett's heart hammered in his chest, but he kept his face neutral, his hands visible and empty of weapons. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The descent into the valley took longer than the climb up. Every step felt weighted with consequence, each footfall echoing in Garrett's chest like a drum. As they drew closer, he could make out details. Children playing near the fires, women working with hides stretched on frames, men sharpening tools and tending to horses. And then someone spotted them. A shout rang out, sharp and alarmed. Within seconds, the peaceful camp transformed into organized chaos. Women grabbed children, pulling them toward the structures. Men seized weapons, bows, spears, rifles, and formed a defensive line. Garrett's instinct was to raise his hands, to show he meant no harm, but he remembered Nasha's words. "Stay quiet, stay calm." Nasha stepped forward, calling out in her language. Her voice carried across the valley, strong and clear. Garrett couldn't understand the words, but he heard the emotion in them. Hope, relief, desperation. The defensive line held firm, but he saw confusion ripple through it. Someone shouted back, disbelief evident even without translation. Then an older woman broke from the group, running forward with a speed that defied her age. "Nasha!" The name needed no translation. The two women collided in an embrace that made Garrett's throat tight. They held each other, sobbing, speaking rapidly in words that tumbled over each other like water over stones. More people approached now, cautiously but drawn by the commotion. An old woman, tears streaming down her weathered face. A young man whose face bore a striking resemblance to Nasha's. But the weapons remained pointed, specifically at Garrett. A tall man pushed through the crowd, his bearing suggesting authority, His face was carved from hard experience, his eyes sharp and assessing. He spoke to Nasha in their language, his tone demanding answers. Nasha responded, gesturing to Garrett, explaining something at length. The man's eyes never left Garrett. When Nasha finished, he stepped forward, stopping just outside comfortable distance. He was older than Garrett by perhaps 10 years, with silver threading through his black hair and scars crisscrossing his arms. A warrior, clearly, and a survivor. "You," he said in heavily accented English. "You bring Nasha home?" "We traveled together," Garrett replied carefully, keeping his voice even. "She wanted to find her people. I helped her get here safely." "Why?" The question again, that simple word that carried a universe of suspicion. Because she asked for help, because it was the right thing to do. The man's jaw tightened. He spoke to the others in their language, and Garrett caught the word white man repeated several times, each utterance dripping with justified anger. The crowd murmured, the sound building like distant thunder. Nasha stepped between them, speaking rapidly, passionately. She pointed to her wrists, showing the scars. She gestured to Garrett, then to herself, then to the mountains they'd crossed together. Whatever she said, it made several people lower their weapons slightly. But not all. The tall man, who Garrett guessed was their chief or leader, studied him for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then he spoke, his words deliberate and heavy. "My name is Dakota. I am brother of Nasha's dead husband. I lead here." He paused. "You are white man. White men kill my people. Take our land. Take our children. Sell our women." His hand tightened on his rifle. "Why should I not send you away? Or worse?" It was the most honest, direct question Garrett had faced in his life. There was no good answer. No words that could erase the history of violence and betrayal that stood between them like an unbridgeable canyon. But he had to try. "You shouldn't trust me," Garrett said, meeting Dakota's eyes without flinching. "I haven't earned that. My people have done terrible things to yours, things I can't defend or excuse. If you tell me to leave, I'll leave. If you tell me never to return, I won't." He took a breath. "But I made a promise to Nasha to help her find you. I keep my promises." Dakota translated for the others. The crowd's murmuring grew louder, more agitated. Some voices sounded angry, others uncertain. An elderly man with white braids spoke at length, his tone measured and thoughtful. A younger woman argued back, her words sharp and bitter. Finally, Dakota held up his hand for silence. When he spoke, his voice carried authority that commanded immediate attention. Then he turned back to Garrett. "Our elder says there is a way. A test." Dakota's expression was unreadable. "You pass? You stay as guest? You fail?" He left the sentence unfinished, which was somehow more threatening than any specific threat could have been. "What kind of test?" Garrett asked. Dakota smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "You say you help Nasha because it is right thing to do. You say you keep promises. Now we see if this is true." He gestured to the camp around them. "You give us gift, not money, not weapon, not horse." His eyes bored into Garrett's. "You give us something that costs you, something that shows you understand sacrifice, something that shows you see us as people, not as, what is word? Charity." Garrett's mind raced. What did he have that would mean anything to these people? His rifle, his father's pocket watch he carried everywhere, the deed to his ranch. None of it felt right, felt adequate. These weren't just objects to trade. Dakota was asking for something deeper, proof that Garrett understood what had been taken from them, what continued to be taken. The crowd waited. Nasha watched him with worried eyes. Silver Bell stood patiently behind him, occasionally pawing at the ground. The sun climbed higher, the heat building, And still Garrett stood silent, thinking, searching for an answer that felt true. Then it hit him. Not an object, not a possession, something else entirely. I'll give you my time, Garrett said slowly, the idea forming as he spoke. Not a day, not a week. I'll stay here. Learn your ways, your language, your customs, work alongside you, hunt with you, help rebuild what's been destroyed. He paused, letting the full weight of what he was offering settle. I'll give you myself, my labor, my loyalty, for as long as you'll have me. The crowd fell completely silent. Even the children stopped their distant playing. Takoda's expression shifted from skepticism to something else. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. You give up your ranch, your land, your life? Takoda demanded. I'm giving up one life to gain another, Garrett said. That land will still be there. But this... He gestured to the camp, to the people, to Nasha standing beside him. This matters more. Takoda translated rapidly. The crowd erupted in debate. Some people looked shocked, others angry. A few, including the white-haired elder who had suggested the test, wore expressions that might have been approval. Nasha stepped forward, speaking urgently to Takoda in their language. Whatever she said made him pause, reconsider. They spoke back and forth, a rapid exchange that Garrett couldn't follow, but felt in his bones was about him, about his fate, about whether this strange offer was genuine or just another white man's trick. Finally, Takoda raised his hand again. Silence fell like a heavy blanket. The elder says you are either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both. Takoda studied Garrett one more time, then nodded slowly. We accept. You stay. You work. You learn. And we watch. We see if your words match your actions. His expression hardened. But know this, white man. You betray us. You hurt anyone here. You break your promise. And you will not leave this valley alive. You understand? I understand, Garrett said, and meant it completely. Takoda turned and spoke to the crowd. Whatever he said caused the weapons to finally lower completely. People began to disperse, though many cast backward glances at Garrett, some curious, some hostile, all deeply uncertain.
Nasha approached him, her eyes glistening. You really stay? You give up everything?
Garrett smiled, surprising himself with how peaceful he felt about this decision. I'm not giving up everything. I'm choosing something different, something that matters. She studied his face, then nodded. You are a strange man, Garrett. But maybe good man too. Maybe, he agreed. Guess we'll find out. The first weeks in the valley tested Garrett in ways he'd never imagined. Not with violence or cruelty, but with the simple, relentless challenge of belonging where you fundamentally didn't belong. They gave him the smallest shelter at the camp's edge, a structure barely large enough to lie down in, made of branches and animal hide. He didn't complain. They gave him the hardest tasks, hauling water from the distant stream, gathering firewood from the steepest slopes, preparing animal hides that left his hands raw and bleeding. He didn't complain. They spoke their language around him, deliberately excluding him from conversations, testing whether isolation would break his resolve. He didn't complain. Instead, he listened. He watched. He learned. Takoda worked him harder than anyone else, assigning impossible tasks with impossible deadlines. Carry 20 logs up the mountain before sunset. Skin and prepare 3 deer hides in a single day. Dig a new fire pit in ground so hard it might as well have been stone. Every morning brought new challenges, each one designed to make Garrett quit, to prove he was just another white man with pretty words and no substance. But Garrett had grown up on a ranch where hard work wasn't punishment. It was life. His father had taught him that you measured a man not by what he said, but by what he did when nobody was watching. So, he did the work. Every impossible task, every back-breaking job, every assignment meant to humiliate or exhaust him.
And slowly, grudgingly, things began to shift.
The children were first. Kids always are. They judge less and forgive faster than adults. They started following him at a distance, giggling when he mispronounced words in their language, teaching him correct sounds through exaggerated repetition. A little girl named Mika brought him wildflowers one morning, placing them shyly at his shelter's entrance before running away. An older boy named Takala showed him a better way to chop wood, demonstrating with patient gestures when words failed. Then the women. Nasha's mother, a dignified woman named Ayasha, who'd lost 2 sons to violence, began leaving extra food near his fire when she thought he wasn't looking. Another woman, heavy with pregnancy, allowed him to help her carry water when her burden became too much. Small gestures, but they meant everything. The men held out longest. Trust, once shattered, takes generations to rebuild. But even there, cracks appeared. During a hunt, when Garrett's rifle brought down an elk that would feed the camp for days, the hunters acknowledged his contribution with subtle nods. When he worked alongside them to build a new storage structure, they corrected his mistakes without mockery, showing him better techniques with the patience usually reserved for family.
And through it all, Nasha watched. She didn't hover or interfere, understanding that Garrett needed to earn his place without her protection. But he caught her eyes on him often, assessing, wondering, hoping.
2 months passed, then 3. Garrett's hands grew calloused in new patterns. His skin darkened under the mountain sun. Words in their language came easier now, though his accent remained terrible, judging by the smiles it provoked. He learned to read weather signs he'd never noticed before, to track animals over bare rock, to prepare medicines from plants he'd walked past his entire life without seeing. One evening, as winter's first cold began creeping into the valley, Dakota appeared at Garrett's shelter. It was the first time the leader had sought him out for anything other than assigning work.
"Walk with me," Dakota said simply.
They walked in silence to the valley's northern edge, where the view opened onto distant peaks painted purple by the setting sun. Dakota stared at the horizon for a long time before speaking. When Nasha came back, I did not believe her story. White man who buys Apache woman and frees her? White man who travels dangerous mountains to help her find family? He shook his head. Stories like this do not happen, not in my experience.
"I understand why you doubted," Garrett said.
I still doubt, Dakota admitted, his honesty sharp as a blade. But I watch you. 3 months now, I watch. You do not complain. You do not ask for special treatment. You work hard. You learn our ways with respect, not like you own them. He paused. You are still white man. That does not change. But maybe you are a different kind of white man. Garrett didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Dakota turned to face him directly. Winter comes. In winter, valley is hard, very cold. Food becomes scarce. You have survived easy part. Winter is test that matters. His expression was serious. You can leave now. Return to your ranch. We will not stop you. You have fulfilled promise. You brought Nasha home. You stayed. You worked. Your debt is paid. The offer hung in the air between them. Garrett could leave. Return to his simple life. His comfortable solitude. His world where he understood all the rules. No one would blame him. He'd done more than most men would even attempt. I'm staying, Garrett said. Why? Dakota asked. That eternal question that seemed to follow Garrett everywhere. Garrett thought about it, searching for truth rather than pretty words. Because 3 months ago, I had land and a house, but I was alone. Here, I have nothing but this. He gestured to the camp below,
to the fires burning orange in the gathering dusk, to the people who still didn't fully trust him, but were beginning to accept him. And somehow, I feel less alone than I have in years.
Takoda studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Good answer. But winter will test more than your loneliness. He started walking back toward camp, then stopped and looked back. Nasha asks about you. She worries you regret choice. I don't, Garrett said simply. Then maybe you should tell her that yourself. He found Nasha near her family's shelter, repairing a tear in a leather bag. She looked up as he approached, and something in her expression, hope mixed with fear, made his chest tighten.
Can we talk?
He asked. They walked to a quiet spot near the stream, where water tumbled over smooth rocks and created a sound that gave them privacy. The stars were emerging, one by one, like secrets being revealed. Takoda says I can leave if I want, Garrett began. That I've fulfilled my obligation.
Nasha's face went carefully neutral, but he saw her hands clench. And? You go? No. I'm staying. If you'll have me. If the camp will have me. He took a breath. Nasha, these past months, working here, living here, being part of something bigger than myself, it's changed me. I don't want to go back to the man I was before, the man who lived alone on a ranch, helping no one, connecting with no one. You helped me, she said softly. You helped me more, Garrett replied. You gave me purpose. You gave me... He searched for the right word. You gave me belonging. Nasha was quiet for a long moment, watching the water flow past. When she spoke, her voice carried vulnerability he'd rarely heard from her. When white men take interest in Apache women, it is not for good reasons. They see us as things to use, things to own. I'm afraid that maybe you... She stopped, unable to finish. I'm not those men, Garrett said firmly. I stayed because I want to learn from your people. I want to be part of building something good. And yes, he met her eyes directly. Because being near you makes me want to be a better man than I was. The confession hung between them, vulnerable and honest. Nasha's eyes glistened with unshed tears. My people, they see you different now, she said. They see you work hard. They see you respect our ways. But Garrett, this is my family. This is my world. If you stay, if we... She didn't finish, but the implication was clear. I know, Garrett said, and I'm not asking for anything more than the chance to prove I mean what I say. Not with words, but with actions, every day, for as long as it takes. Nasha smiled then. A real smile. The kind that reached her eyes and transformed her entire face. You are a strange man, Garrett. Very strange. So I've been told, he said, returning her smile. They sat together by the stream as full darkness fell, not touching, not speaking, but existing in a comfortable silence that spoke volumes. Above them, stars wheeled across the infinite sky, ancient and indifferent to human struggles. But here, in this valley, two people from impossible worlds had found something rare and precious. Understanding, forged through sacrifice, trust, built through action, and the possibility of something neither of them had dared hope for. In the distance, campfires glowed warm against the mountain cold. Somewhere, a child laughed. Somewhere, a song began. Traditional words carried on voices that had sung them for generations. And for the first time since arriving in this valley, Garrett felt like he might actually belong. Not because anyone had granted him permission, not because he'd passed some final test, but because he'd given the one gift that truly mattered, himself, completely and without reservation. Winter would come. Challenges would remain. But whatever lay ahead, he would face it here, with these people, in this place that had somehow become home.